Hello grade 9, hope you guys are doing well and staying safe. I want to first say thank you to Mr. Ahmed for allowing me to hijack his class. So I'm filming from his class today. The biology bridge was way too far and I totally get every time you complain about how far it is. So today we're going to be going over the second topic. We're still on the immune system as you can see here, but now we're focusing on the parts, the structures and the functions of the immune system, okay? So if you want to follow along with your ebook, this is section 2. So chapter 31, section 2, just like you can see here. And the key concept is that the immune system consists of specific structures, so specific cells, tissues, organs that make it up. Obviously, we know that an organ system is made from all of these components. And all of these different parts or different structures are going to help the immune system provide or perform its specific function, which we will talk about today. By the end of today's lesson, you should be able to describe the basic structures as well as the basic function of the immune system. Compare and contrast the two types of immune responses, specific and non-specific. You should be able to contrast and compare passive and active immunity, and explain the difference between the different types of white blood cells. So there's more than one kind of white blood cell out there, and you need to be able to explain the difference between them. And we'll talk about each learning target later as we move along. Now, when we're talking about the immune system, the basic function of the immune system is to provide the body with a sort of defense mechanism in order to fight off pathogens as well as infections, okay? So, lucky for us, we have an immune system. People who have compromised immune systems, meaning that their immune systems are not working properly, they have some form of disorder or even disease that prevents their immune system from functioning properly, consistently get sick. And they will get seriously ill for the smallest of reasons. So, lucky for us, most of us have very healthy immune systems, and this prevents us from getting sick all the time, especially during times like right now where we do have this issue going on with the coronavirus. Having a healthy and very strong immune system means that you are protected from contracting potential illnesses, including something like the coronavirus. So when we're looking at the immune system, there are obviously specific structures that are involved in the immune system. You don't have to memorize all these organs. You don't have to know the location of the organs. This is something you should have already covered in middle school. But you need to know that there are specific structures that we will talk about in more details as we move along. Those are the ones that you want to focus on, okay? But as a general kind of overview, your immune system is composed of these structures. So you have mucous membranes, which are present in your nose, they're present in your throat. They essentially produce a sticky substance known as mucus, and you probably know what I'm talking about. Especially when you are sick, you produce a lot of that. And mucus is super important because it's like a trap, okay? It's like a glue. It traps bacteria, it traps dust, it traps infections and pathogens before they enter into your body so that they don't make you sick. You also have your tonsils, okay? So your tonsils are also an area where pathogens can be collected. So the whole point is to not have these pathogens enter into your body. So instead, your tonsils will collect these pathogens, again, as a mechanism of kind of holding on to the pathogen so that it doesn't invade your body further. Some of you might have your tonsils removed, okay, because some people have issues with their tonsils being overly, sensitive, and they're continuously getting infected. So sometimes tonsils get removed to prevent the person from having excessive reactions and continuously having infections, okay? But most of us have our tonsils intact. They're present up here, kind of like behind your ears. You also have the lymphatic vessels and the lymph nodes. So your lymphatic system, so you have lymphatic vessels in your upper body, your lower body, and lymph nodes in other places, several places in the body, but the majority or the largest part is underneath your armpits. Lymph nodes also kind of collect things. They collect pathogens so that they don't escape and move to other parts of your body where they can cause further damage. Your skin is your largest organ. It's also your first line of defense. Obviously, it protects us from the outside world. We also have the spleen and the thymus and the bone marrow, which we will talk about later in terms of how they contribute to the immune system. This is the same thing. So this image is showing basically the same thing, but here is showing you the actual structures. How do they look like of the immune system? So just to kind of reiterate what I just said, these are specific structures that make up the immune system. When we're talking about structure and function, this is the structure part, all right? Now, when we're talking about the immune system is like, we can think of it as like a, when you're playing a video game, okay? For those who do play video games. Or if you've ever watched a movie that was talking about war, right? Usually what happens is there are several lines of defense. Before the enemy can enter into an area, especially if you play Fortnite, okay? You have to somehow have several lines of defense, right? To prevent the enemy from coming. So first you might have a wall, right? You might have a wall or a fence or some form of barrier so that the enemy cannot move in the first place to make it difficult for them to enter. So that is your first line of defense. Our bodies, our immune system have the same thing. Our first line of defense is the thing on the outside, which is our skin, okay? So skin and things like our mucous membrane, these external structures, they act as the first line of defense, just like that wall that you would have to prevent the enemy from entering. Let's assume that the walls were not strong enough and the enemy has entered past these walls or past the gate, then we enter into the second line of defense. So during the second line of defense, you can think of it as those soldiers that are kind of, they don't really have a specific job. They're just there to kind of, in case someone enters beyond the walls that you're trying to protect, they're there to fend them off, okay? So the second line of defense is like a non-specific patrol. So here we give the example that they're like patrolling soldiers. So in our immune system, the patrolling soldiers are white blood cells that are continuously moving around in your blood. They don't have a specific job. Their main kind of role is to just, in case a virus or a bacteria or a parasite or any sort of pathogen enters past the first line of defense, they are there to fight it off, okay? They're not specific to what kind of pathogen. They don't have a specific job in terms of target this or target that. They just target any foreign substance that might enter past that first line of defense. Then, okay, if the pathogen still is able to get past those white blood cells, we go through the third line of defense. So the third line of defense is very specific. Think of it as those specific sergeants, okay, or the specific soldiers that have a specific job, and they have all the really fancy weapons and the really fancy machinery and all the technology, and they are able to kind of target the intruder or target the enemy, and they are able to eliminate it much easier. So the third line of defense in our immune system is very specific, okay? It's also acquired immunity, meaning it's an immunity that you're not born with, you get as you are exposed to more and more pathogens, and we will talk about that later. So the analogy I give here is that they're like the elite units and soldiers, just like I explained. And if we had to talk about the specific structures that are involved in the third line of defense, it's the lymphocyte white blood cells. There's specific kinds of white blood cells, as well as antibodies known as B and T cells, which we will talk about in more details next. So let's focus on the first line of defense. In the first line of defense, this is, like we said, non-specific. It doesn't care, it doesn't discriminate which kind of pathogen you're being involved in. Your skin protects you from everything, whether it's a virus, whether it's a bacteria, parasite, dust, allergens, things that cause allergy. It doesn't care, okay? It's not specific. It's an external barrier, meaning it makes up the outside of your body, right? The skin covers us externally on the outside, and it prevents us, or prevents things from, or pathogens, if you have to be specific, from coming into our body and making us sick. Then we have the mucous membrane, which, like we said, is like glue. It traps particles, it traps pathogens. The whole point is that you don't want it to enter further into your body. So the mucous membrane will trap these pathogens so that they can be gotten rid of easier. We also have excretion. So the word excrete, okay, to excrete something is to release it, okay, to produce it and release it. So excretions are things like our sweat, which get rid of toxins, get rid of waste, our tears, release salt, and also other substances that can act as mild disinfectants. Mucus, which traps pathogen and dust. Stomach acid, which is hydrochloric acid, extremely corrosive, extremely strong, so that in case a pathogen enters into your stomach, it doesn't cause a stomach infection. The acids digest it and kill it before it can do anything. And saliva. Sometimes they tell you lick your wounds, okay? That's because our saliva has very mild antiseptic abilities. And if you remember from the first lesson, antiseptics are things that basically kill pathogens, okay? Obviously, they're not extremely strong antiseptics. We can't lick our wounds every time we are cut, but they do have mild antiseptic abilities. Our saliva does. If you remember from last year, you probably did learn about the ciliated epithelial cell, okay? Try to think back to where that was located. Ciliated epithelial cell. So cilia are tiny hair-like structures that act like little dusters. So they look like that and they're constantly pulsing and moving, okay? And if you remember from last year, they were found inside your airways, so lining the lungs and lining the air tract, the trachea, sorry. So essentially, these cilia are constantly moving back and forth to move away dust, to move away pathogens, to move away bacteria, so that they don't enter into your lungs and cause a lung infection such as pneumonia. You also have these mucus-secreting cells. They're known as basal cells if you want to be more scientific, okay? But essentially, next to the cilia, so this is the cilia in yellow, next to it in purple are these cells that produce mucus, so that as the cilia moves the dust and pathogens, the mucus traps it, so it doesn't go anywhere. And then the white blood cell might come and destroy it, okay? What I'm trying to show you here is that our first line of defense is very non-specific, okay? It targets any type of pathogen, dust, etc. that's entering, and a perfect example of it would be our skin or the cilia and mucus cells that are produced or present in our airways. Our second line of defense is going to be also known as the inflammatory reaction. So I'm sure you've experienced this whenever you've had a cut or an injury, or even if you're someone that has allergies, you probably experience this all the time. This whole feeling of you feel like sometimes your throat is tight, right? If you have a cut, you might see that it turns, the area where the cut is turns red, okay? If you have allergies, certain parts of your skin might start turning red. You have hives. This is all known as an inflammatory reaction, and it's your body trying to fight whatever foreign substance has entered, okay, in a slightly more specific response. So basically, how do we know that an inflammatory reaction has occurred? There's 4 signs that we look for. Redness has occurred, heat has been generated, there's swelling and pain, and we have all experienced this, right? I'm sure the last time you had a cut, you felt all these 4 things. You saw that your cut turned red, the area around it turned red. It feels like it's kind of hot, right? As well as it might have become swollen, and of course, you've experienced pain. When you experience these symptoms, it's essentially your body going through the second line of defense, also known as the inflammatory response. Now, why is this happening? Basically, your body releases a specific chemical known as histamine, which causes all of these things. Histamine causes redness, heat, swelling, and pain. And the reason why it's doing that, you might think, why is my body trying to torture me, okay? But the reason why it's doing that is because as it's causing these symptoms, it's also causing other things to happen, such as your capillaries, your blood vessels, become enlarged to allow the white blood cells to come to the area where you have a cut, okay, in order to help heal it faster. The pain and the bruising, the pain and the swelling, this is again a sign that white blood cells have come to this area to prevent you from getting infected, to help you heal faster, etc. Now, white blood cells are also, there's different kinds of white blood cells, but the white blood cells that are responsible for the second line of defense are the non-specific white blood cells. We call those macrophages, okay? And this family of white blood cells, the macrophages, they're non-specific. That means they can target viruses, bacteria, parasites, allergens, etc. They're not specific to which pathogen they deal with. They can deal with multiple pathogens at once. So this was the second line of defense, okay? Finally, we have the third line of defense. If all else fails, this is what happens. Third line of defense is very specific, okay? It has specialized cells that target a specific kind of pathogen. They also understand which pathogen your body is dealing with, and they remember it, so that if next time you are exposed to the same type of pathogen, you don't get sick twice from the same kind of pathogen, okay? Or very rarely does that happen. So, the third line of defense is very specific. It deals with specific pathogens or cancer cells, okay? Or foreign cells that have these markers that identify them, known as antigens, okay? Let's take a look at what antigens are in more details. I will also show you the difference between something known as an antigen and an antibody. You might have already been experienced or exposed to this in middle school, but let's review this one more time. What is an antigen and what is an antibody, and how are they related to the immune system?
In this video, the difference between an antigen and antibody, as well as how they interact, will be described. An antigen is a substance that induces an immune response. Typically, they are either toxins or foreign materials that are introduced to the body. The presence of an antigen induces the production of antibodies in healthy individuals.
Antibodies are proteins that the body produces in defense to specific antigens. They are designed to bind to their specific antigen, aiding in the destruction and therefore removal of the foreign substance. How the antibodies and antigens interact can be seen using the example of a bacterial infection.
The bacteria that infect an individual have chemical structures on their surface that the body uses to identify the bacteria as a foreign material. Following this recognition, antibodies are released which bind to the epitope of the antigens.
Another example can be seen with blood transfusions. Red cells will have differing chemical structures on their surfaces depending on a given blood type. For instance, type A blood has A antigens, and type B blood has B antigens. If someone with type A blood receives type B blood in a transfusion, their body will label the new blood as foreign, and antibodies will bind any B antigens they encounter.
Antigens and antibodies are key components in describing the body's defense against foreign invaders.
Okay, so I hope that made it a bit clearer in terms of the difference between an antigen and an antibody. Just to review, antigens are surface markers. This is how you can think of antigens. You know how like football teams, every football team wears a different jersey, different symbol, different color. It tells you this is Manchester United, this is Real Madrid, this is Liverpool, etc. Right? Pathogens, okay, let's say we have a certain kind of bacteria or virus, they also wear jerseys, okay, but they're not jerseys, we call them antigens. They are markers. They tell the body, oh, this is a E. coli bacteria, a specific kind of bacteria. Hey, this is a coronavirus. So essentially viruses, there's hundreds of different families, and we call them strains, types of viruses. Same with bacteria, hundreds of different families or strains of bacteria. How will the body know which one is which? It looks at the antigen, okay? So the antigen is usually found on the surface, and this is a cell, so this is a bacterial cell. So if this is a bacterial cell, the antigen is usually found on the surface, as you can see. So if you remember, what do you think this layer is right here? This layer is the cell membrane. So the surface of the cell is the cell membrane, and the antigen is found on the cell membrane, on the surface. It is a specific marker. Now, you might have a white blood cell circulating around in the blood, and specific kinds, remember this is a specific response. The third line of defense is specific. So you might have a white blood cell that is kind of circulating around, and guess what? It has a specific antibody, okay? The antibody has a very specific shape that only fits the antigen of the pathogen it is trying to notice, okay? What does that remind you of? This very specific shape. Perhaps the lock and key model of the enzymes that we talked about, okay? Similar, very similar. Only the white blood cell will only recognize the specific pathogen if its antibody, if the white blood cell's antibody fits with the shape of the pathogen's antigen. It's a lot of words, I know. You might want to review this part more than once just to kind of get it, okay? So, if you're still kind of rusty in terms of the difference between antigen and antibody, this graph should make it very clear. Antigens, they basically cause an immune response, a specific immune response, and they are found on the pathogen surface, okay? They're usually proteins, but they also might be polysaccharides, lipids, or nucleic acids. We don't care about that detail, but you should know what these words mean, right? These are all macromolecules. And they're basically found either within the body, found inside the body, or externally on the surface of the pathogen. Antibodies are proteins. This is important, okay? Antibodies are proteins that recognize and bind to the antigen. They're usually found on the surface of white blood cells. And they are produced inside your body, specifically by the immune system. Okay. Now, just to kind of dig deeper into this third line of defense, the specific response, the white blood cells that are involved in the third line of defense, or the specific response, are known as phagocytes. They're specific kinds of white blood cells. They are all made in an area inside your bones known as the bone marrow, and they are usually called in when the second line of defense, when the non-specific white blood cells weren't able to do anything. Okay, they weren't able to kill this pathogen, or they might have captured it but not fully killed it. The more specific white blood cells will be called in during the third line of defense. We also have two specific cells that we want to talk about. There are also types of white blood cells. B lymphocytes, it's a type of white blood cell, and T lymphocytes. Now, what's the difference between those two types of white blood cells? B cells are made inside the bone marrow. So if you take a look here, the bone marrow is an area found inside the bone. T cells are made in a specific organ right here known as the thymus, okay? So, B lymphocytes, they produce antibodies that will bind to the antigen, which we said is found on a pathogen, okay? So they make this. They make the antibody that binds to an antigen. B lymphocytes do that. They also produce these things known as memory B cells. These are so important because memory B cells allow your body to remember a specific pathogen so that in case you're exposed to it again, you don't get sick twice, okay? Your body already has built a memory in terms of, oh, I know this pathogen. No, you're not allowed in here. We're gonna kill you, okay, before you can even enter. That's what we mean by memory B cells. T cells also produce memory cells. They're called memory T cells, but they also produce these things known as cytotoxic T cells and helper T cells. What do these fancy scientific words mean, miss? Cytotoxic T cells are T cells that kind of produce chemicals that allow the, think of enzymes, right? They produce chemicals and enzymes that allow the pathogen to be destroyed. They produce the weapons, okay? Cytotoxic T cells produce the weapons. While helper T cells, okay, while helper T cells, what do you think they do from their name? Helper. They help, okay, so they kind of help the T cells and the B cells to do their job, to get rid of that pathogen, kill it, so that you don't get sick, okay? So this was basically, we're still on the third line of defense, but now we talked about more specifically two types of white blood cells, B and T cells. Let's take a look at, again, the two types of white blood cells, or the different kinds of white blood cells involved in your immune system. Phagocytes, they eat, what does that word remind you of? Phagocytosis, okay, so they engulf by active transport, by phagocytosis, they engulf the pathogen. T cells, if there are basically cells that are already infected, okay, they will come and destroy the body cells. Let's say you have a red blood cell that has become infected with a bacteria, okay? It will come and destroy, not the bacteria, because it's too late. Your red blood cell is already infected. It will kill that red blood cell, the infected red blood cell, so that it doesn't divide and make more damaged red blood cells. Now, B cells, they are the ones that produce antibodies, okay, that will target the specific antigens on the surface of the pathogens. So, how do I make this as simple as possible? I know I said a lot of big scientific words. B cells, they attack the invaders from outside the cells. Coronavirus, it has entered somehow into your bloodstream, okay? B cell will find it, recognize it, kill it. T cells will kill your infected body cells. Let's say the coronavirus got into your red blood cell, or got into some of your lung cells and started to kind of basically infect them, started to kind of populate in your lung cells. The T cells will come and they will destroy those damaged lung cells so that they don't keep dividing and making more and more damaged cells. You don't want that. You don't want that. That's how diseases spread and take over your body. You want to stop it so that you don't make more disease cells, okay? For here, I'm not going to go through this because you have the information in front of you. All you need to know for this slide is we have, like I said, several types of white blood cells. We don't just have one type of white blood cell. There are many different families of white blood cells. For each one, it has a specific function, okay? So I want you to just go over these white blood cells and make sure you can recognize their functions in case they come up in a multiple choice. I will never ask you, give me the function of a basophil, okay? I wouldn't expect you to memorize it by, memorize it. But you should be able to identify it, okay? Describe it, basically. Another thing I'm showing you here is that the white blood cells also come in different structures, and we know that structure is related to function. If a neutrophil looks like this, and a lymphocyte looks like this, they look differently, which means they might have, or they must have actually, different functions. The last thing I want to talk about today is that the fact that we have two different types of immunities, passive immunity and active immunity. So when we're talking about our immunity, we are born already with with a type of immunity known as passive immunity. This is immunity that you already have in your genes. You're born with it. You might get it from your mom. Okay, as a baby, basically feeds on the mom's milk. They get some of these basically white blood cells that will help with the immunity. That's why doctors highly recommend that a baby breastfeeds, meaning that they drink milk from the mom and not from bottles, because you get a lot of things from your mom's milk, including immune cells. Okay, this is known as passive immunity. You just kind of have it, you're born with it. You might get it from mom at a very young age. Active immunity occurs after a specific immune response. You get active immunity every time you're exposed to a pathogen. As you enter school when you were little, right, KG, you would get sick a lot, all the time, you're sick. That's because you are exposed to all these new bacteria and all these new viruses. All these new pathogens are around you all the time, And at the beginning, you keep getting sick because your body isn't used to it yet. It hasn't built immunity. But the more you get sick, the more you get exposed to these minor, strains of bacteria and viruses, the stronger your immunity becomes. That's why a lot of people say, no, let my child play in the mud. Let him get dirty, okay? That will help to build immunity. That's what they're saying, okay? That's what they mean by that. I want to go back to a point that I made last time when we were talking about the coronavirus, okay? And I said, if we look at statistics dealing with the coronavirus, it's super interesting that this disease is mostly affecting and killing, unfortunately, elderly people. And it's not really affecting children, okay? So they're seeing that little kids, children, are barely being infected by coronavirus, and they seem to be not being affected by this virus. And the reason why this is, or a hypothesis, obviously we don't know anything for sure yet, this is very brand new to us, but one hypothesis is that because kids are much more exposed to these strains of coronavirus than adults, they have built an active immunity, strong enough that now when they're exposed to this new strain, new family of coronavirus, they already have enough strengthened active immunity to not even be affected by it. They have B cells, they have T cells, they have other types of white blood cells in their body circulating that have built memory, to remember, oh, this is a coronavirus, we've already seen this before. Okay, it might have been a different strain, it might have been a different family, a cousin, basically the coronavirus, but I can remember how to respond to this, so I'm not going to get sick. So essentially what I'm trying to say here is that active immunity, you can strengthen it the person can strengthen it as they are being exposed to more and more pathogens. You can also strengthen it by lifestyle choices, such as not smoking, exercising, eating healthy, making sure your diet has a lot of antioxidants, and other substances, dietary substances, that boost our immune system, Taking things like probiotics, eating a lot of yogurt, a lot of vitamin C, drinking orange juice, lemon, etc., So you can actually do research and look at things that boost your active immunity, and there's plenty of stuff out there that you can actually be doing. If we're comparing and contrasting passive and active immunity, both of them, as a comparison, both of them prevent you from getting sick in the future, They make sure you are healthy and protected at all times. That's about it for section 2. I hope this was helpful. See you next class.